Right up front, we need to recognize, and maybe for some to accept, that what Matthew records the Magi seeing is a natural phenomenon, not a supernatural manifestation of God's glory like in a cloud that you see occurring in the Old Testament and sometimes in the New. Nor was it an angel that led them. I show these examples in Revelation where symbolically stars are talking about angels, or better said, heavenly beings, and also Jesus refers to himself as the bright and morning star at the very end of the book. So it's not very hard to present these verses in a way where one could say that this was much like the angel of Yahweh who led the Israelites out of Egypt. The main problem with that is that he has already been born on earth. And the wise men refer to the star as his, meaning that it represents his kingship. These magi were very well known throughout the ancient world and carried a lot of weight. Herodotus, in his famous Histories book, said that the Magi came from one of the 6 Median tribes. And when Cambyses, the son of Cyrus the Great, left for Egypt, is that he left a Magian in charge of his family. The famous Greek philosopher Democritus, as written by Diogenes Laertius, that he learned theology and astronomy from Magians. Strabo wrote that the Magi were living in Babylon and mainly were devoted to the study of astronomy, being composed of several astronomer groups. Strabo said earlier in his works that the Magi were even appointed as Parthian kings. Tacitus spoke about how Nero made Tiridates, the Magian, king in 63 AD. Pliny the Elder said that Mithridates, the Magian, brought an entourage with him when he went before Nero, and that they had initiated Nero into their esoteric banquets with the added comment that Nero was trying to learn how to perform magic from them. And Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria said that the Magi were Persians who investigated the works of nature for the purpose of becoming acquainted with the truth. Do at their leisure become initiated themselves and initiate others in the divine virtues by very clear explanations. So here is the complete composite secular picture of who the Magi were and their high regard in the ancient world. And all of this mirrors Matthew's description. But what about verse 2's star in the east that they saw? The main Greek word here is Anatole, which can be referring to the cardinal direction, just like with the Magi coming from the east. It can also be talking about the early morning hours shift from dark to light. Interesting that Zechariah refers to the unborn Messiah as Anatole from on high in his prophecy. But it can also be referring to the celestial rising of stars and planets in the east. The most preferred lexicon today is BDAG, because of the 4 authors' last names, has as its first entry on Anatole that verse 2 deals with rising because of the preposition and the article, in contrast to verse 1 about the Magi's geographical journey. So verse 2 is speaking about an astronomical rising. Now, if that was confusing, what they more simply meant was if Matthew wanted verse 2 to be speaking about geographic location, then Matthew would have wrote it in the same manner that he did in verse 1. Contemporary to Matthew was Philo, who used Anatello when describing celestial objects rising, which is why more modern versions will say rose or rising of the star that the Magi saw. I like the NSRV wording by saying that the Magi observed its rising, which is exactly what astronomers do. And all of this fits as Herod was probing them about when exactly they saw the star appear at its rising. Knowing that these astronomers were looking at a natural celestial event begs the question of why did whatever they saw trigger in them that that's the sign for that Messianic King of the Jews was now born? Or maybe better worded, where do they even learn such a thing? Because they are pagans after all. Well, by looking at the secular description of the Magi, is that you can see that they are Babylonian and Medo-Persian rooted. In the time that they would have encountered and been interacting with Jews on a continuous basis was during the Babylonian exile period. But when Cyrus led all of those in captivity to freely return to their homeland, is that just over 50,000 Jews actually did go back. This is most likely a very small percent of the total population, like say 10%. So a high majority of the Jews remained in the Babylonian Persian territory and would have been easily still continued to interact with the Magi for the subsequent centuries. But where, or from whom, what have they learned about the Jewish Messiah can only be found in one book in the Old Testament, and that is Daniel. 8 times Magos is found in the Septuagint, and all of them are in Daniel, while he was in Babylon during the exile and working in Nebuchadnezzar's and Belshazzar's court. Oh wow, the critics aren't going to like this, as it only points towards early authorship. And as you can see, is that these astrologers were connected with and to the Chaldeans, just like Strabo said in his description. The 2 things to take note of is first, Daniel 1:20's comment that Nebuchadnezzar found Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego 10 times better than the Magi who were currently in office. But the more important one is the episode in chapter 2 with the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue of multiple metals. And after the utter failure of the Babylonian Magi is that Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar what his dream was and its meaning. And as shown on the chart, is that this is when the Magi got their first lesson in who Yahweh is, and what, and when, his kingdom will be installed on earth. And after Daniel aced this test, is that then the king made Daniel a great and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Reminder, hit the subscribe button below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment. And don't forget to visit us at justscripture.org. But in the meantime, stay salty.